Good afternoon. This is Tony Abatini coming from you from Frozen Ropes University in Chester, New York on a beautiful sunny day in February. We have a very exciting guest with us on campus today, Dr. Veera Asher. How do we even describe what the good doctor does? When you start talking about human performance, athletic performance, life skills, coping skills, there's some universal habits that whether you're a professional athlete like some of you are who are listening to this, or just moms and dads. So we have Dr. Asher in with us today, and this morning was kind of neat. We had Jake Miller from the Detroit Tigers and Anthony Abatini with the Staten Island Ferry Hawks. They firsthand down in the laboratory had an opportunity to be with Veera, and they were introduced to some really, really cool things. We're going to have Coach Veera. We're going to call her Coach for purposes of the podcast, but world renowned as a professional singer, understanding of the neuroscience behind breath work and breath play and brain health. And we don't want to get too scientific today. At the end, there'll be some contact information where Coach Veera will be talking about when she'll be back in New York or San Diego doing some of her clinics. But this is really a discussion on how we can somehow be more efficient, both emotionally and physically, in everything that we do. So, Coach Veera, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Talk a little bit about what you did this morning with our two professional athletes.
Well, I took Jake and Anthony, incredible athletes, and the key thing that was awesome about working with them is they're already at such an elite level, is honing in further potential they already have that we could unlock to then enhance what they can progress on in their careers.
Okay, so let's start drilling down. You mentioned unlocking, right? What were the keys, or how did you start the unlocking process with them? To tell our audience some of the cool things, concept cues, tricks, whatever you want to call them, in your own words, and how it started with them this morning.
Okay, well, I guess I should start with the fact that the key to unlocking everything in my world is with brain, body, voice is the voice piece. So I started asking them, have you ever trained your body, your mind and body, brain, body? There's all these techniques from breathing to strength and conditioning, which is my another area of expertise. But have you ever worried about or considered how well your vocal cords or vocal folds are performing while you're doing these explosive athletic movements? Or even just in breathing. And they're like, quiet, and then they're like, no.
Right.
And that was the answer I was expecting. And because most people don't, because we don't have a way to integrate the voice. So to unlock, I use the voice as the built-in device. So I didn't add a device. I didn't say, hey, here's a device or here's a wearable. I said the device is inside your body, and it's built in, and it's your voice, and it's the vocal mechanism. So the first thing I started with is, how does it get activated? It doesn't work without breath. So you need to exhale for sound to work. So I gave them a way to use the voice and then use the power formula we use in strength and conditioning. Power is force times distance divided by time, or you can use other formulas. But take that voice sound and play with it with speed, time, power, intensity, and activate it through other brain body things and put it together.
There's so much, and I was
does
down.
That help?
It does, and I was down there watching and listening, and I know we had conversations off stage, excuse me, about all of the information, the certification, the different strategies on breathing. Mm-hmm. You can, for $10, be a certified breath play or breath work. Your system is a little different. Not a big fan of just simply take a deep breath and relax and find your diaphragm and whatnot. Talk to the audience about, and it's a very unique and I think holistic way, and you mentioned it before about, excuse me, using the vocal cords that are built in as the initial mechanism. How is what you do different from what probably most of our audience has seen or watched or listened to in the way of traditional breath play, Veera?
Okay, so there's two sides to the breath work. One is activate for readiness. So I talk about the ready set. What do you do before you go? So that's what we were working on today with Jake and Anthony. Okay, that's really specific because I want to prime them to be ready to go. Okay, so it's kind of the best kind of little warm up or the ready set activate. So that's what we're going to do. So in terms of that, I don't use the word relax because I'm not going to relax. You can rest or be efficient. So I want effort versus stress. I want you to be effortful efficiently. That's number one. But number two, I don't talk about the diaphragm because the system, and this is a deep science piece, there's 3 systems I activate at all times. There's one that's called sympathetic, fight or flight, parasympathetic, which is rest and digest, and then the third one is oxygen response system. So that oxygen response is that respiratory system, okay? So I want it to be super efficient. So I'm going to go back to that efficient piece. So how do we get the best breath in? Do you know how to take a deep breath? So what we did was we actually activated a muscle that gets primed to help you with inhale and exhale. And that muscle is not the diaphragm.
And what is it?
It's the transverse abdominis muscle. And it's in charge of the exhalation, expiration. And you can't, like I said with the voice doesn't work without breath going up, okay? Well, primarily you can do inhale, but you don't want to do that one.
Right.
So the voice works with expiration, forced expiration, actually. That's the scientific term. So to keep it simple, the neural feedback loop, the readiness, let's get ready, neural feedback loop can be primed through the transverse abdominis muscle. So the key word, it looks like literally a corset, like an apple core inside your body. If you Google it, you'll see it looks like a core, like of an apple core eaten out like a core. And then it's layered on top of that, because it's the deepest abdominal muscle, then there's obliques, and then external, internal obliques. Internal, external. Yeah.
So talk to us about, and you had some great pictures of some great athletes, this bubble cheeks, right? A term that is yours, that has been trademarked by you. How does the bubble cheek mechanism become integrated into your work?
So the bubble cheek was something in my doctoral dissertation, was something that I figured out would help with, we all know that you shouldn't have, like, let's use the term like tight joints or restricted joint movement, right? So there's a lot of joints in the jaw and things like that. So there was just a little technique that I figured out that would help release and optimize joint stability and performance in certain jaw hinge, vocal tract, everything related to the voice. So I was like, great. Then one day I was watching baseball and I'm like, wait, all these athletes, especially in baseball, I would see them bubble cheeking, meaning their cheeks would puff. And I was like, wait a minute, I guess I didn't invent anything new because they're doing it. So then I call up some baseball friends that are pretty high level like you and say, hey, so they've been training this? And they're like, what are you talking about? People didn't notice it. So some of the first articles I wrote that are out there are called Bubble Cheek Hiding in Plain Sight. It's been hiding in plain sight this whole time, but we didn't know why people were bubble cheeking. So the science and the deep science that I have actually explains why we bubble cheek. So then I said, okay, I'm going to now take this training tool and help folks activate this on demand, on command. So the analogy I'll use is, we all know how to yawn, right? We know when we get a really good yawn. But if I say, right now, yawn on demand, it's hard to do.
Yep.
So what I found out is the science behind what I was doing with the bubble cheek explained why athletes, especially in explosive, powerful movements and decision making in split second. So think of a baseball athlete. batting or hitting, as you say, hitting. I'm not the baseball expert, but I surround myself with all these experts.
Yep.
And you're doing not just an explosive movement, but you have to make a split-second decision. Hit, no hit, go, no go for stealing bases. Like, it's that go, no go. And we all have that in everyday life, making these split-second decisions. So that's where I said, okay, we're combining these two pieces together. You have to have breath, and you have to have anaerobic explosive. You have to have effort behind it. And that connection, and the more elite the athlete, the better the connection with what we call is the cognitive performance, is that decision making under pressure.
I love how you talk about breath to movement. You know that the breath by itself has no relevance on the performance end, but the breath to movement and its effect on efficiency. We used the term, and it was interesting you had used the term, and both Anthony and Jake looked at me like, wait a minute, we hear that every day here. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And having athletes understand this whole concept of effortless power versus powerless effort.
Yeah, that's very nice. I like that.
And it's, as you worked with them down in the lab this morning, that they started realizing that they can be strong and efficient in their core, in their chest, but their limbs and the other parts of their body were free to move. And it was not tension. They were not moving with tension, but they were moving with intention. Mm-hmm. And there's a big distinction to that, and it really resonated when you made them simply aware, right? The best teachers, of what I can see, lead students to information. And then the student figures out, you know what? I understand it. I can explain it. And I can integrate it into my world now. And you were very good with Jake and Anthony to do that. You kind of led them to, this is the different models of inhalation, exhalation, the hold, the bubble cheek, and the way in which there was this initial and even bigger bubble cheek, and how it was affecting their movement patterns. How can the Little League and high school coaches, the parents, how does this go beyond the hitting or batting, as you call it?
Stop it!
World, Veera.
This is on a podcast.
How do we take what I think these life skills about efficiency and slowing oneself down, and understanding that this priming of our central nervous system is really where we need to be more often in our day-to-day lives?
Well, I'm going to mention thank you for that question, because this is where it's fun. It has to be fun. So we give challenges. What I gave Jake and Anthony today, we started with saying the alphabet, but I gave it some nuances, yes. Right? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. We gave that, and that comes from our special operations side of things. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I want to get to just what do the kids want? When I work with kids, I love kids, and kids of all ages, and kids at heart. You're a kid at heart, right?
Did you say kids, Veera?
Oh, no, I'm not supposed to say kids
at
here.
Frozen Ropes University, it's children or players?
Children or players or children at heart. Okay, children. There we go. Youth at heart, the joy.
Exactly.
So what I really want in the coach side of me, I don't want kids to have to wing it, because wing it means that you're going to try something, but you might hurt yourself. So we have a safety built into this technique that allows children, I like to catch myself, allows children and people of all ages, okay? So basically, to want to try something, take that extra leap of faith, like risk, but mitigate that risk by building their confidence, that they know that my systems are primed for me to push myself a little bit and go that little bit further. So number one, the technique primes the systems for you to be ready, set, to try something within your parameters of preventing injury, but also pushing your boundaries of performance. That's exciting, because then we're not winging it. Then we're actually doing it, and you're building the confidence to know you have these steps of training protocols that you can do.
Well, let me just stop, because you're so right. the better athletes that I see at the major league level and in Little League, the routines, the stepping stones, you're giving each of these athletes, and I love the fact that you mentioned winging it, where each swing, each skill action is simply random. Where in your initial stage of every movement, I now have something that I can grab onto that will precede everything that goes on after that. As compared to, you'll see athletes have no awareness of the breath, have no, I call it their pre-actions. Pre-actions is a term in the baseball world that are, some of it is cognitive, some of it's physical. A pre-action, you watch Shohei Ohtani, his pre-actions, you'll see him kind of take the bat back and forth like the trunk of an elephant. You'll see other hitters, Dusty Baker, when he played many years ago, a mutual friend of ours, you would see him play the piano with his fingers. Those are pre-actions that we see. What you're talking about is the invisible part. These pre-actions, these things that should be done prior to what everybody else is seeing in the sport.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because what's so interesting about singing and where it all started, and I'm a trained opera singer, and then I love to fly and sing, so that got me into strength and conditioning, and then I ended up working with our special operations. And what we started realizing, it's a feeling. So artists, they're, considered feeling people. But guess what? When we're intuitive, when we get to a certain elite level, we go by a feeling. We don't micromanage the action. You don't say, put your hands here, do this, step here. It's beyond that at that point. It's a feeling. So I went to the best trained humans in the world that get the best training to measure against this technique, the brain, body, voice training tools, to say, is this a new feeling? And they're like, oh my gosh, it was a new feeling. That's all I wanted to know. Then we had to figure out how to define it. And that was what was interesting, is they said, this would be great for kids and for focus, to mitigate fatigue, to build confidence, all the things that they do for mission success. So it was the decisions you make in your pre-actions to help you execute to mission success. What does that mean? That's anybody. I want success when I go and sing with the symphony and the conductor raises the baton. It's like I've got to go on their heart rate. Like my heart might be racing. I've got to be at their heart rate of what they're going to, and when they lift the baton and say, okay, here's your cue, I got to go and I got to be ready for that. How do you do that? That is the invisible part. And so that's what I love about this. It's like the perfect ready, set, prep, activate, and the kids say, unlock your inner superhero. When you just feel it, and you feel it, and then you have that confidence and you go. So we have a very technical way in the deep science to explain it. I won't get into it here, but in the simplest form, it's okay, breathe in, and we're going to teach you how to activate that transversus abdominis muscle. So you're controlling your breathing. Breath control is a big deal, right? In sports too.
Of course.
In singing, it's everything.
Yep.
It's all about breath support, breath control. So we're going to control the vocal mechanism, your built-in device, through this muscle. So that's the first thing, and that's what I targeted with Jake and Anthony today. Then what we did is we started extrapolating that to the other parts of the body within the core system, and then all the joint muscles, all that, so that eventually they weren't micromanaging their own body. The body that knows the most efficient path, their other brain, I say the unconscious brain, found the best, most efficient pathway by just feeling that readiness. And that's what we want everyone to feel. And once you feel that readiness and that confidence, what comes right after that? The joy.
No doubt.
Right.
You hear coaches all the time, and I use it at times in a different way. We need to learn how to relax. And there are certainly some players, sports psychologists talk about your IPS, your ideal performance state. If you're revving up at a 9 or 10, you're going to have some mechanism to get you down to what I call the super 7. 7 is that I'm not revving too much, but I'm not asleep. Okay?
Right.
That quiet alertness to an extent. So, and again, you can, and I believe you can, I don't even know if this is a question, it's more of a statement. You can visually relax because from a vision standpoint, you will be able to track moving objects much more effectively. You will assess space and time so much better when your eyes are not in this deer in the headlights, as I call it, not in a fight or flight response that we want our body to an extent to have. Talk to me about the overuse of just relax. And I see it sometimes with the youngsters. It's like they look like silly putty. They look like Gumby. There is no sense of alertness. There's no flight response readiness to get ready to swing a bat or throw a ball. And in the sports that we use here, right, these are all ballistic, fast twitch. We got to be ready to go. So the danger in just telling the world to relax as it relates to motor skills.
Yeah, and you're getting into gross versus fine. So the vocal mechanism and the eyes, fine motor control, right?
Yep.
So what we say, if you've got those optimized, that means the gross motor control was there. You have to have that gross motor. If you can't do your basic stability on a single leg stance, you're going to have an issue with eyes and vocal cords, like vocal folds. I better keep saying that for my industry. If I may, I'm going to use Jake and Anthony, their heart rates. One thing we were talking about is the idea of movement, explosive movement. What we did was sort of the antithesis of that to get the heart rate up. What you saw today was internal activation of power that someone can't see. Just like when I sing as an opera singer on stage, I'm not moving, but my heart rate's going from 85 to 155, let's say, over 3 minutes, back and forth. That's a resiliency. So we want neural resiliency. What I saw in your athletes today was neural resiliency. They could, and in some of the elite, world, we talk about dial up, dial down. So I'm just going to take a sip of water.
Yeah, of course.
So when we talked about the kids being in fight or flight, that's one of the systems I mentioned that we target. But imagine if you can be in a hype state. So that's what I was saying, the athletes today, they got super hyped just in a very static movement. We use like lunges and things like that. Again, body movements, right? Super hyped. But we're also activating the parasympathetic, the rest and digest. So I'm going to use the term a calming effect over while you're in fight or flight. So let's use the term control. You're in control of let's use breath and movement simultaneously in order to not look freaked out, basically. And you can make that decision that split second. But here's the sort of science-y side. What I was also doing by helping them, giving them tools, was to activate potential explosive energy. So the heart rate's you're getting pumped up, you're getting activated. So they felt the activation, ready to explode. So if you're hitting, you're at, you're in your stance, you're preparing for the pitch, as I was watching you toss to your, is that how you say pitch, toss to your
that's
son?
it. Yep.
Yeah. He was in his readiness position, ready to hit, but he can't be relaxed there. He has to be, so let's use potential energy versus then it's potentially building to a certain level to explode. And that's why kids need to know the feeling. They know the feeling of chaos. It's like chaos in the body. It's all this energy all over the place. How do we calibrate it? So what I was doing with anybody I do BBB with is helping them reset a baseline. So they activate a new baseline of performance that includes a feeling of the voice. And then they can recalibrate and reset to that baseline when they feel out of control. And I think that's what you're talking about, is we don't want to ever have someone in fight or flight out of control. So we call it the aroused system. You need to be at a certain state to make really good decisions split second. So heart rate will go up, but you need to be in control. So a lot of the kids, if their faces are really looking tense, like you say, you don't want the eyes. But what we say is like it's an open face, but very relaxed. So the more the face is open and relaxed, the eyes do pop when they're ready to be at a certain sympathetic mode. There's different levels, but the face is very relaxed even if the body's super activated. And those are some parameters that we look for.
I think you have to share with the audience, and it was so great. And as your clinics around the country, and we're hoping that we'll be able to host some in New York or San Diego or Boston, Myrtle Beach, wherever we have locations.
Tennessee
in Knoxville. The whole using the alphabet, which is so simple that everyone from second grade to college graduates, we know we can recite, and how you use that in a very simple yet effective way in teaching them about the hold and the rhythm also.
Yeah, so you brought up word rhythm. So prosody is a word that a lot of people don't know.
Prosody. I don't know that word.
Prosody. Okay, I sing in 17 languages. When I sing, the sequencing is I can sing phonetically to the point that a native speaker can understand me. Now, if I speak it a different pathway, it's not as accurate in the communication of the phonetics. So that's interesting. That's a whole other podcast. Okay. But neuromechanics plus prosody is the fancy sort of math behind what I do. Neurophysiology, biomechanics, which is familiar, the mechanics, and then prosody. The BBV with the ABCs. It took 14 years to kind of find the entry point of something that people would try, because we all make it fun, so we have fun challenges, and we're talking of all ages, so right. Elite level. I went right to my most elite guys in the special forces, and then the kids, and then the wives, the whole family, and then the fun part is getting the whole family doing it together. And so basically it was, what would somebody be willing to try that if they failed, they want to try again? Okay, so when I say, hey, try the alphabet in one breath, that's for your audience here, say it in one breath. That was just a fun challenge. But what we started seeing that was just like divine by design. It was like, wait a minute, this became more powerful than the bubble cheek, because it showed, and I will say this, the smarter the person, the faster the brain went, and they went out of, I'm just using this as non-science, the brain away, detached from the body. They weren't connected. And the more elite the athlete you see, we're always connected with that cognitive decision with the body and the power. So this one little exercise and fun video series that we're going to launch online by the end of this month, I hope to get it out there, and it's BBV with the ABCs, and we have by kids, also some animation by kids for kids, and it's also kids on the spectrum, but it's for families and all ages and everybody, but focus with also folks that might be dealing with ADHD or distraction. We have a lot of distractions, so I don't want to make it like a clinical medical term. It's more just, hey, how can we focus? Hey, how can we feel the happy today? Hey, how can we get our systems primed just for the day?
Well, those are objectives for all of us. Forget clinical medical definitions. In the crazy world that we live in, both as adults and children, having that for all of us, you can become anxious and not have anxiety issues. People talk about manic depression. Well, normal people like you and I, you're kind of normal and I'm kind of normal too. We go through stages of depression and anxiety. So to your point, these are universal applications of habits and strategies. I like using the word concepts. I never, people are always asking me about, just give me one tool. Well, mechanics have tools. We're talking about human beings here, okay? I'll give you some love. And people say, Tony, that's a little corny. Get over it, okay? You're a human being, I'm a human being. I want to share with you something, and we're sharing concepts today. And in the teaching world, concepts to cues to connect. It's the C3 model that I've used for 30 years. You need to present a concept to the dumbest player on the team for him to understand that. What are some of the cues? ABC, ride the breath, all the things that you talked about, and does it connect? Eventually that concept to cue, can they own it? That's master teaching, and that's what you were very good at. You presented the concept, you showed them the cues, both verbally and physically, and then it was the aha moment when Jake and Anthony said, I got it. I connected this to the world in which I live in. So yeah, this is not about, it's great that the elite athletes can use this, great. But I know here at Frozen Ropes University, this is about the children. This is about the mass people that need this information. And it's great that we get guys to the big leagues and we can use them the same way you needed to go to the top of the food chain in the military world, right? To be able to find if this stuff was good. And now it's about bottom up. Now it's about really helping more children, more athletes that are never going to be professional, Veera. The reality is, we tell people this all the time. We want my son to be the next Shohei or the next Jake Miller. That's good, but those are the half of 1%.
Right, but we need to be able to know that there's so I agree with you there, but I also have seen in all humans as a performance coach now from the arts, performing arts, sports, military, everything, we're all sharing the same core principles, right?
No doubt.
So when our thing is the ABCs, the BBV with the ABCs, a journey to unlock your inner superpowers. That journey is where the most joy comes from. So that, and then healthy competition, like will you run as fast all by yourself rather than someone that might run next to you? That's the kind of culture that we're putting into this whole, in K-Perform, the company and all our products. The BBV systems is the baseline of like the base foundation of every one of our products. And then we have analog and we'll have digital and then hybrid versions, right? For our next gen kids or children. And so I know you're going to get me on that. What I think is important now is that what I also saw, and I'm going to bring this up, is that it was made for kids on the autism spectrum. That was an ask of me. What I started seeing is that, hey, wait, we're not doing it from a deficit model. All of us feel like there's something, like the people that resonate with the culture of K-Performance and you and me as people and leadership within our growth and a growth mindset of growth, abundance mindset, all of these types of things is curiosity. Right? So that's an empowerment model. So everything I want someone to try, I don't want to wing it, but I want them to have the curiosity to try and then the joyfulness to keep trying. But there's a whole bunch of serious stuff in there. But do you really want to go listen to 4 PhDs talk about something? Some PhDs want that, and I do that. On the other hand, from every day, let's just have some fun challenges and go out there. So the perfect people to try this with. And this is also where I think there is a bit of an issue with using your voice. I mean, in the gym, and we have these pop-up clinics that I really want to do with you and your organization and bring it to your facilities, is that, hey, you're going to start saying the ABCs in the gym while you do the exercises in very clinical ways. And you're going to perfectly, like we taught, I gave Jake and Anthony the perfect practicing option to choose or not. It's opt in or opt out. You don't have to do this. That's the beauty of it. You choose to do it. You choose to have fun with it. And then we will constantly give ways to keep challenging you. So the people that I tested this with before I came to you, before I brought it to the public, is my incredible team behind me. And they come up with, and this is where it all started. So like Matt Hank is he's a strength and conditioning coach, one of the best that I've ever worked with in my life, and I'm a CSCS as well, but he just knows all the different techniques. So we started looking at ways to integrate with already what's out there. So we're not here to take out anybody. Like, it's not to say, hey, don't do this.
It's not about replacement at all.
Yeah, there it is, yeah. And we're not looking to make anything obsolete. It's to enhance something. We're adding like a new spice into a recipe that's just going to enhance all the flavors. So, and that's where we say we're a gap in brain science. There's a lot of brain health, brain science out there, as I'm sure you've heard with neuroscientists, that's a common thing now. It's part of our lexicon now in any type of performance. So what's good about with Matt, it was like, I saw it on the strength and conditioning side. With Annette Lynch, she's our credentialing for coaching education. She created all this stuff for like Special Olympics. But her personal passion is golfing. So all of a sudden I'm like, oh, she integrated it there. Then Andy and his family's warfighter family, they're artists, and his daughter does all the animation. She did some animation. And so it was wonderful to see how they were integrating in everyday life. And then all of a sudden, Coach Med, he's one of the best, 60 years of like fundamental skills training for kids, children and all ages for football. And then I thought, it's LTAD. That was our alignment, long-term athletic development. So I said, athletic only, or like what you're saying, personal life skills, things like that. So then we were saying, how about LTA to the power 3D, which is athletic, attention, and then articulation, verbal articulation. I had a voice thing. So that was great. And then even my business partner, who's, a finance guy, and he's like, hey, I do these long drives, and I love using the bubble cheek when I'm getting tired and sleepy, and I just use it to wake up because it makes me more alert. And I was like, oh, that's great. And then a lot of people told me that. So what I'm trying to get at is how Dr. Veera, used the bubble cheek in my life as an opera singer, flying and singing, doing all these adventures, deep and deep sports. Everyone has their own story of how they use it. And that's sort of where I think the real joy will come as we roll it out now, back out into the public world again. And I just want to make sure I got all the names. Yeah.
So you talked about your team, right? You gave thanks and gratitude to your team.
And also shout out to Mike Durham, who's also our cyber guy, because we have to have a cyber. And then Stephen, who built a gym out in LA for us, a performing arts gym. And he's also with Army Reserves. So
the audience, listeners, people that don't know, where can they find more information about you and the upcoming products and clinics that might be coming out? Give us a website, give us something where the audience can find you after today.
Well, thank you, number one, for today. Also for letting me come and train some of your guys. Well, your own son, Anthony, and his friend Jake, and just extraordinary athletes, and also giving you the experience so that you could get feedback.
I was singing the ABCs this morning. It's been a while since I stumbled after P, Q, and R, but I did get through it, Veera. Thank you for that lesson, yes.
And so then on my website, so the company is K-Perform, the letter K, P-E-R-F-O-R-M, kperform.com. So you can go there. There's a lot there. So there's everything from blogs to information, scholarly information to future clinics. But the most important thing I'd like you to look at is the BBB with the ABCs, the Kickstarter. There'll be a link there. Eventually it'll have its own site, but you can always tap in there and go through to the site. And then also I'm on LinkedIn. You're welcome to message me there as Dr. Veera Asher, and most of the team is out on LinkedIn. And otherwise I think I'm not on. I haven't been on Instagram and Facebook for some time.
We'll get you up to speed. But
Matt Hank is on there
Hank.
quite a bit. Matt Hank, he's on there. Coach Matt Hank is out there. He's based in LA, and so he's out there. But we're gonna have more stuff coming up. But the website's the best place.
Well, on behalf of Beyond the Ball, which is our podcast, I'd like to thank you for spending time with us. Probably in the next day or two, once our technical people put this together with the video and the audio, we'll make sure that our ecosystem within Frozen Ropes knows about the podcast. And for now, we're going to ask if anyone has any questions or comments. You can always, for now, get a hold of Coach Veera. I love calling you Coach.
Sure. Well, that's when I train. I'm Coach.
Yeah. Chester at frozenropes.com. You guys know where we are on campus, right? These are questions that I probably can't answer. We'll make sure that we get Dr. Veera Asher back at some point very soon. So this is Tony Abatini now signing off on behalf of Beyond the Ball. And let's make sure that we all stay in good space. As I always say, we stay in good space today. We're going to be much better, both on and off the field. And we'll see everyone hopefully soon in our next episode.